So, what happens when a routine job transfer threatens to completely tear a family apart? Well, today we're going to dive into a Supreme Court case that asked a really powerful question. Does the government actually have a duty to protect its own employees' families? And this isn't just about one person's job, it's about where we all draw that very fine line between work and life. At the heart of this whole story is a choice that really nobody should ever have to make: your career or the well-being of your family. And it was exactly this dilemma that sparked a major legal showdown. All right, let's meet the man at the center of this, Mubashir Iqbal Zafar. He's an assistant health inspector, and his wife, she's a teacher. They've got 2 young kids, so when a pretty standard transfer order came through, it wasn't just a move for them, it was a full-blown crisis. You see, his wife has a serious heart condition, and he's diabetic himself. So for them, being separated wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a real threat to their family's health and their stability. But here's the really crucial part. Mr. Zafar wasn't asking for some special favor, not at all. He was pointing to a government policy that was already in place, one designed specifically to prevent situations exactly like his. He wasn't trying to bend the rules, he was just asking the government to follow its own rules. So what was this rule he was talking about? It's known as the Wedlock policy, and it's designed to do something very simple: keep married government employees stationed in the same place to cut down on family hardship. It's basically an official recognition that public servants have lives, their parents, their spouses, their caregivers, too. And this policy wasn't some new, untested idea either. It has actually been evolving for years. It started way back in 1998 for married couples in the civil service. A year later, it was expanded to include unmarried women, and then, later on, women whose husbands worked outside of government. You can see the clear pattern here, right? It's a consistent move towards providing more support for the family unit. Okay, so this is where the real clash happens. On one hand, you have a policy that literally promises compassion. But on the other hand, you have the administration's brick wall response. A transfer is just part of the job. They argued the policy was just a guideline, not a right, and that Mr. Zafar had no vested right to stay where he was. The Supreme Court saw things very differently. They used this exact phrase, a one-dimensional approach, to describe how the administration was thinking. It was a pretty direct slam on a bureaucratic mindset that just failed to see the human reality behind all the paperwork. After the lower courts actually sided with the administration, Mr. Zafar took his fight to the highest court in the land, and suddenly this wasn't just one family's problem anymore. The Supreme Court's involvement turned this whole thing into a nationwide question about how the government should treat its own people. So how did the Supreme Court break it all down? Well, their logic was incredibly straightforward. First, they said the policy exists to reduce hardship, period. Second, because it exists, employees have a legitimate expectation that it will actually be followed. Third, the administration gave no good reason, no compelling public interest, to ignore it in this case. So the conclusion? It was clear. The transfer was illegal and had to be thrown out. But the court didn't just stop there. Oh no. They grounded their decision not just in the policy itself, but in the highest law of the land, the Constitution. And this, right here, is where the ruling becomes a true landmark. They brought up Article 35, which explicitly says that the government has to protect the family. The court made this really powerful link, arguing the Wedlock policy isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a direct fulfillment of this constitutional duty. Then they went even further, citing Article 34, which is the state's duty to make sure women can fully participate in national life. Now, you might be wondering, what on earth does a transfer policy have to do with that? Well, as it turns out, everything. The court argued that these rigid, thoughtless transfer policies create real-world barriers that hit women the hardest, often forcing them to choose between their career and their family. So, by upholding the Wedlock policy as a constitutional duty, the court is helping to tear down those structural barriers. It's a recognition that family stability is essential for the full participation of women in the workforce. So here's the bottom line, the big takeaway. The Supreme Court elevated the Wedlock policy. It's not an optional guideline anymore that can just be dismissed for administrative convenience. Nope, it is now a constitutional obligation. The state's duty to protect families now outweighs bureaucratic preference. And this is the vision that the judgment ultimately leaves us with. In the court's own words, the entire purpose of the state is to serve the people. Policies and laws aren't supposed to be abstract rules. They're supposed to be tools for making people's lives better. Governance must be, above everything else, people-centric. This ruling sets a really powerful new precedent. It champions a more humane, a more family-sensitive approach to public administration. But it also leaves us with one final lingering question. Can a single judgment, no matter how powerful it is, truly shift a decades-old bureaucratic culture? That remains to be seen.